We're jumping into a new series today called This Is Our Story. And as you guys know, man, we have an album coming out in September, and I'm just so excited about it. I've been traveling back and forth to Nashville, and we're working on this thing, and I come home, and I'm so excited about it, and I feel like people are excited, but you don't understand the excitement of going down to Nashville, and then you drive home. You almost have to be there. So I've been trying to take some of our team members down, and it's just been the most exciting process ever. I just cannot wait for you guys to hear this because the Lord's anointing is on it. And, you know, the thing about it is it's just a dream come true. You know, a couple years ago, our pastor did a 40-day fast, and God gave him a vision of 3 things. There were many other people fasting with him during that time. And one of the things is, you guys ever have God tell you something just really crazy, and you're just like, okay, God, if that's going to happen, then you're just going to have to flat out do it. That's this album. Like, we're praying, we're fasting, and God's like, listen, when the time comes for you guys to build out the facility, not only will you be building the facility out, but I want you to tell the story through music of the journey. And it's been about 3 years, and right at the time where we're building out, we're going to be dropping an album September 22nd. And the timing of the Lord is perfect. And it's not something that you think about, like right at the beginning, but as it's unfolded, I'm like, God, your timing is perfect. And so both things are happening simultaneously, just as God said it would. And it's just a dream come true. And I told Chase, I told some of our team, I said, how many people get to do this in their life? Isn't the Lord good? Let's just enjoy the Lord and what he's done, and let's enjoy this process. And I pray that as a church we enjoy it too, and just soak it all in, because it's just a dream come true for all of us. And I think today we're going to be talking about the song In Control, and I want to tell you the story behind it. So I'm going to invite Dave and Emily Cunningham up. If you guys would welcome them, please. And I got to be careful because I stole some of Dave's thunder in the first message in the first service, so I can't do that. But, you know, the song In Control was written about Dave's story. And many of you guys may not know Dave's story, but the stories you're pretty much going to hear in this sermon series literally were happening simultaneously with us trying to get in this facility. And that's the crazy thing about this. You know, when people take a journey of faith, Satan does everything he possibly can to pick you off one by one. And he starts going after people personally. And he starts going after their families. And you know, the thing that Satan uses to try to minimize your faith is the thing that you can turn the tables on to maximize your faith, because you can learn to trust in God through the thing he's trying to use to bring you down. And then you turn the tables on the devil. And as Michael Scott says, how the tables turn. The turntables. Sorry, that's my one office quote I'm allowed today. Our lead pastor, Michael Scott, isn't here, so... But, you know, the other day I told Dave, I said, hey, Dave, I got to talk to you, man. And we're not going to go to Taco Bell to talk, so this is a real talk. And so I ran out of the park. Right? Yeah, we do go to Qdoba. Serious. We go to Qdoba. That's our thing. Who doesn't love Qdoba? I mean, the fatty burritos, it's awesome. And when I say fatty, I mean P-H-A-T-T-Y, as in like cool. That's a cultural thing. Sometimes I have to be careful. Sometimes I say things in like the 70s and the 60s. They mean something totally different, and I wasn't around for that. So, but I told Dave, I'm like, hey, Dave, I got to tell you something. You know, we got this sermon series coming up, and you know, this song was written about your story, and he didn't know. He didn't know we've been singing this song for many years, and the people I'm starting to talk to about this, they really have no clue that these songs were really inspired by their story. And so my first question for you today, Dave, is, man, what was your first reaction when you heard that?
Well, I think, first of all, the first time I heard the song, right away I was like, wow, this is powerful. I just felt God speaking to me, like, wow, he's really talking to me. Like, he's talking to me in this. And there must have been some allergies going around that day because my eyes were a little, watery or whatever. So I'm sure it was the air in here or whatnot. But, yeah, and then when Champ shared that with me, it's like, wow, I mean, he really, really was speaking to me. But I think, like so many people, when you hear a song that's powerful and it touches you, it's really, I think so many other people felt the exact same way. Like, this song is for me. And so really, even if it maybe was in part inspired by our story, it's definitely for everybody, and for us to all be able to enjoy it. And I hope it speaks to as many people as it does me personally.
So would you just share the story of where this song came from?
Yeah, so me and Emily, my lovely wife here, we've been married for 17 years now.
Hey, yeah.
Thank you. And we have 6 beautiful children together, and our first 7 years of marriage were really just, just great. So, and not that the whole 17 hasn't been, because
You're probably the
it
only
really
people
has,
who would actually say that.
Yeah,
First
we're
5 years are really hard.
Yeah, we didn't have any major trials. We didn't have that, big thing that came along, that big storm, and so we were just really blessed. And 5 years in, we started leading small groups and things like that, and so it just, we'd heard the golden couple, David and Emily, they never face any, and we really hadn't faced a lot of trials. A deployment to Iraq, in there and things like that, but really not a lot. And then 7 years in, we had our first big storm, and I'm going to let Emily actually share that part.
Yeah, I have to be honest, really the first 7 years, I was like, this marriage thing, it's pretty easy.
I can't stand you guys right now.
It,
You're like
I'm
the
sure
person
Dave
who can
made
eat
it
whatever
easy.
they want and never gains a pound. We all secretly hate you. We're just not telling you that.
Well, so 7 years in, we had 5 kids at the time. Ben was just a baby, and we'd always been very intentional about how many kids we were going to have, just because we didn't take it lightly. And we surprisingly got pregnant with number 6, and right off from the start, we just didn't have an easy feeling. And I thought, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. Certainly it's because I know way too much. And so right before I hit about the 6-month mark, I went and got another checkup, and my doctor's like, everything's great. And I said, okay, I'm really being ridiculous. And then I worked 3 nights in a row, and we were busy. And on my 3rd night, I realized I hadn't felt my baby move, and I was sure I was just, because I was busy, hadn't even gotten a chance to eat dinner. So while I was at work, I was like, you know what? I'll run to triage and I'll Doppel myself, listen to my baby's heartbeat, and then I'll go get some dinner. Which is a huge mistake. If you're a nurse, don't ever do that. So I Doppeled myself and there was no heartbeat. And I knew right then that she was gone. So we knew that God was blessing us even in this, because we were set to transfer from Florida to Washington State a week later, and it was actually my last night of work that this happened. And so instead of us being halfway in between Washington and Florida, we were at the hospital where I knew all the nurses and the doctors, and they loved me and took care of me. And through it all, we just knew that God was blessing us and watching over us even in such a horrible situation. So I will let you finish now.
Wow, yeah, how do I follow that part? So we lost baby Molly at 6 months, and so we transferred, and so at this point in time, we went to Washington State. So for the first time in 15 years in my naval career, I was going to a ship intentionally. I'd spent the whole rest of my career with the Marines as a corpsman, and so I was going to something new, and we were excited, but as we were there, God kind of started sharing this promise to Emily that we were going to have another baby. And I was...
He was not on board with this at all.
Yeah, I was like, don't be throwing that God told you stuff at me, I was like, we have 5, there's 7 of us all together, that's a number of completion,
That's biblical.
It's biblical. I totally tried that part too, so... But she was very persistent and just said, she was very patient with me and just said, this, obviously we both need to be on board with this, but I'm just feeling God's going to give us a son, and we're going to name him Samuel. And
9 months later?
9 months later, a couple times in there, and we told people this ahead of time, so a couple times we're like, what if we had a girl? I'm like, it's really going to mess up our testimony, I guess, But God did bless us with another son, and as some of you might have seen this morning, Samuel Patrick up here on the stage rocking out to the music, it was our blessing and kind of that promise from God, and so something good came out of that. So we thought, okay, this is our first big storm, and now we've really got some validity to, sharing with other couples when we talk about marriage and things like that, because now we've had to weather a big storm. Great, we've got that, and I wouldn't want to do that again, but we're there. But as it would happen, that this was really the beginning of a lot. So with that 6th child, we decided now we're really finished. And so we talked about it and decided to have a vasectomy. Now, I'm sharing that because that did not go well. And pretty much from the beginning, from the start of that, I had significant pain that wasn't usual. And without going into specific details, the doctor did not do a very good job. He inappropriately used the cauterizing tool, got really down in and severed some nerves, damaged a lot of nerves, and I started to have a lot of pain. And it was debilitating, and I had trouble walking. And so over the course of the next couple years, I had a total of 6 surgeries, and each time it seemed like it only got worse. And so again, I shared the pain because during the time, a lot of you knew me during that time. A lot of people here at the church would see me walking around, and people would always say, "How's your back?" Well, how do I correct that? Like, I don't want to tell you what I'm really dealing with right now. And because the first thing that happened is women are like, "Oh, I wish I hadn't asked." And the guys are like, kind of get that look. So, but it was bad. And the pain level was great and unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And so with all of that pain that I was experiencing, there was also some guilt in there because as I mentioned before, like I came home from Iraq without a scratch on me other than some hearing loss. And the Marines did a great job taking care of me, the doc, and I had the chance to take care of some of them. And so to have a simple minor surgery caused so much damage, and it was causing my hip muscles to deteriorate, and it was again just affecting me in every way. I felt a little guilty because I'm like, so many of my fellow service members, no matter what branch they were serving in, were coming home not whole, and not just physically, but emotionally as well. And I was really blessed, and so I felt guilty for having pain. And so I was trying to choose not to have pain, and I'd wake up some mornings and go, "Dude, you just need to suck it up. Like, it's not that bad." And then about 10 minutes in, I'd be like, "Okay, it's that bad, seriously."
Dave, will you just talk a little bit about what were you guys going through as you guys went and saw doctors and in that whole process?
Yeah, so again, there was lots of doctors, lots of things going on. Doctors, that surgeon who'd done, we finished surgery number 5 and that came in for follow-up and it wasn't any better. And he looked at me, and he was a really funny, genuinely nice guy. And he was like 70 years old, but still sharp as a tack and like steady hands. And he looked at me and said, "I don't know how to fix this for you. I don't know what to do." And that's a hard thing for anybody, I think. But surgeons especially aren't good at saying, "I can't fix this," because they're trained that they can fix everything. And he said, "I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid only if I do more." He's like, "I feel like I just keep making it worse for you." And I could see the genuineness in his face and his voice when he said, "I want to make this better for you, and I don't know what to do." So it was a little difficult, but we said, okay, and we pushed on. We scheduled an appointment and had another appointment, and then we finally went on April 20th, 2016, to see a neurosurgeon. And we saw this neurosurgeon. He comes in the room a little bit past the time, of our appointment time, and he says, "Listen, I've been reviewing your case. I've called people at WashU, which were competitors to his practice, by the way, and just said, I've called everybody I know. Nobody really knows what to do to fix this for you. It's kind of a unique situation. Not 100% sure what's causing it, and the pain that you're having is clearly, and what you're describing is there, but I don't know how to fix this for you. I'm not sure that anything can be done." And so that was a rough time, because up to this point we've just continued to choose and trust, and it was hard, and it wasn't a short period of time. This is over the course of a couple years. And we came home from that appointment. So we drove home. It was about an hour and a half trip home. And I didn't say anything the whole trip home. Now, for those of you who know me, I can't be quiet for 10 minutes, let alone an hour and a half. So we rode home on this trip together, and then we got home, and I didn't talk when we got home either. Now, what was going through my mind was, God, I don't know if I can take anymore. And I trust you, but I don't know. And I remember thinking this at the time, and I hate to use somebody else's words, but it's pertinent to this. So I remember a time Sarah Harvey telling me, when people say God will never put on you more than you can handle, and she said, I don't believe that, because we're supposed to trust in God and help you go through that. And it was then that I understood what she meant. Not that I'm comparing my situation to that situation, and that's her story to tell, but I understood what she was getting at that point in time. And I wouldn't say that I doubted God, but I was crying out, in my mind, I don't know, because it was starting to come real that I might have to resign, that this is my life. And at the time, I'm 38 years old, and when you're 38, you still feel young. And I'm a military guy. I can run 3 to 5 miles. I do this daily. I am that guy. I can do this. And I realized that maybe I might not be able to anymore. And that was a troubling thought.
Dave, you told me when we met at Qdoba that, you love to run, you love to work hard, and that's where a lot of credibility is. I don't know if you guys know this, but apparently people run for pleasure. I don't know if you guys know that. I think everybody on our staff but Luke doesn't know that either. But Dave talked about, he loved to run, he loved to do physical activity. I know you're a hard worker, and let me ask you this: how were you able to keep your joy, even though you weren't able to do those things?
Yeah, so we always want to try to, what lesson is God trying to teach me in this? And I know we talked about that several times, and I was like, I don't know, God, what you're trying to show me. So there were a couple things in there. One, and first and foremost, we have 6 beautiful children, and who's watching everything that we do. So at the end of the day, we can talk about Jesus, and we can read scripture, and we can do Bible stories together, and we can do the not so great things like fuss at them when, and all those good things. But what they're really going to get is what we show them. And so there was a lot more at stake. There was a lot more eternity at stake than just how I was feeling at a particular time. I think that reality, also looking back now, is I used running as an outlet, and sometimes I took things to the pavement that I maybe should have been taking to God. So that was my decompression. If I had a bad day at work, sometimes I'd come home and Emily would just look at me and you're going for a run, because I truly enjoyed that. And that had been taken from me, and I couldn't do that. And I still hadn't quite learned that, even though I took things to God all the time, maybe I wasn't taking everything the way I needed to. Now, the next part of that, how did I find joy in that, is I didn't share this first service, and it's really obvious to me. I had a lot of people coming alongside me. I had my church family here. I was on staff. I had my wife, who was in my corner, pushing me, praying for me, intervening on my behalf, interceding. The staff, our church family, everybody was praying for me, and sometimes it was really humbling, but it was also almost, I felt like a distraction for people, because so many people would be like, hey, I'm praying for you. I just want you to know we love you and we're praying for you. And I truly believe that. So it's hard not to find joy when you have all these people saying that we've got your back,
Yeah, that's awesome. Emily, what was it like taking care of Dave? Because I know at this point he was walking with a cane. Sometimes every step was very painful. Looking at pretty much disability, possibly for the rest of his life. What was it like taking care of him, and was it hard to continue to trust God, just seeing the everyday pain that your husband was in?
It wasn't hard to trust God, because even in all of this, we spent a lot of time still praying together, and just believing, like Dave said, that there had to be a lesson out of it, and knowing that our kids are watching us and wanting to be that example. But it was difficult. We had always been a team with raising our kids, and suddenly even though he was there, he wasn't. He would sit on the couch because that's all he could really do, that he wasn't in excruciating pain. So he did a lot of family movie time with the kids, because that was really all he could do. I got to where I was the one always putting the kids to bed because he couldn't come up the stairs. And I would, struggled with the feelings of guilt, because I was the one that had encouraged him to get, a vasectomy, because here I had carried 6 kids for him, so certainly he could do this for me. And then there were times of trying to keep myself from having self-pity, as, I was 33 at the time, and I'm like, is this what our marriage is going to be now, is him sitting at home every day, not able to work? There was frustration sometimes on my part because we started talking about if he couldn't work anymore and he was disabled, then I needed to go from working part-time to, which I call my hobby, to working full-time to try to help, make up the difference in income for us. And sometimes I just remember thinking, like, is it really that bad? How bad is it? You're telling me like you can't work anymore? And I feel like, so I sound like I was this really supportive, wonderful wife, but I'll tell you a really funny story, which wasn't funny at the time. So Dave, I think it was his 4th surgery. Okay. And if you've ever if your mom's a nurse or you're married to a nurse, we're supposed to be really compassionate, but sometimes we're just not. And so David had a surgery, and he had like a little bit of a cold before he went in. And at home, he was kind of coughing and guarding. I was like, you need to be using your incentive spirometer and coughing and deep breathing, or you're going to get pneumonia. And he didn't listen to me at all. So I'm getting ready to leave for work one night, and he looks at me and he goes, I don't feel right. And I said, what doesn't feel right? I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go to work, and I'll see you when I get home. And then a few hours later, he texted me to say that our friends had to come pick him up from the house and take him to the hospital because he had, 103, 104 fever. And so that was my winning wife award there, full of compassion. As
Please
I was
join Stephen's ministry.
Yeah. I did go pick him up. I went and picked him up from the hospital when I got done at work.
Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, there were certainly struggles, and I did learn to believe Dave when he said he didn't feel good.
The thing about this story is that many of us watched Dave go through this, and the man was obviously in excruciating pain. I mean, there's no way to describe it. If you were there, every step you could see the pain. But you never saw the pain in his heart, in the words he said, in his character and his attitude. And when you put a situation in God's control, those are the things that come out of it. Some of the song lyrics of this song say things like, be still and know he's on his throne. He's in control of the situation. Even though you're seeing doctor after doctor, 6 surgeries, and this went on for 4 years, how do you continue to trust God? It says, I will trust in you, Lord, in the promise I believe. I'm going to trust in you, God. I'm going to trust in you. Lord, I know you're in control. Many of you guys have heard from the lyrics the implications of Psalm 23 within the song. Psalm 23:5, it says this. It says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. The word enemy in this scripture is a very interesting word. In the Hebrew, it is Sorrell. And growing up, I always kind of pictured this like picnic table with God, where he's setting up this really cute picnic table, like in this little children's book on Art Hill, right? You're at the zoo with your family, and you guys know what I'm talking about. And, just this beautiful picture-perfect picnic. There was this one time when we went to the zoo with Mama and Papa, and do you guys remember Tubbs root beer? I don't know if they still have it. It may be a shop and save thing. Is it a shop and save or Save-A-Lot thing? It's like Bubba Cola. I don't know if there's any Bubba Cola fans out there. If you have 7 or more people in your family, you know all about Bubba Cola, because that's all you buy. And so we had this Tubbs root beer in this 2-liter, and it sat in the car for like 6 hours. And it was like 100 degrees that day at the zoo, and it got so hot. Mama opened up that Tubbs root beer, and it shot up and landed right on her head. And it was probably the best day of my life. But when growing up, when I thought about this table, I always thought of that picture-perfect picnic, in this little children's book. And I thought about the enemy as like Satan kind of dancing around me, right? But the word Sorrell, it goes beyond a person. It can be a person, but it's not just that. This is the definition of this word. It means to bind, to be in distress, to cause distress, to besiege, to be bound. So it's not just talking about a physical person in your life, even though it could be. It's talking about anything that causes you distress in your life. You know, and when I think about that, the things that cause distress in my life, most of the time I bring upon myself, to be honest. I don't know if any other man, you try to be the hero and you burn yourself out. And so burnout ends up being your distress, and then you have to end up crawling back to God and finding renewal. What about confidence? You know, for some of you, the thing that's distressing you today is your marriage is just in a tough spot today. Maybe you're in physical pain like Dave was. See, this word goes beyond a person. It's the thing that is distressing you this week. Anxiety, depression. Some of us have mental things that distress us. And, you know, the thing that distresses us most, it seems like it comes at us every day. You know, I'll be at work and I show up on the highest of highs, but then around noontime, you get a phone call or you get an email, and all of a sudden you're at the lowest of lows. And most of the time I end up kind of in the middle of that by the end of the day, because I try to kind of like, you know, bring it back up. But your day is just a roller coaster. There are many things that can be distressing you at the same time. And in the middle of all of this, according to the passage, God brings out a table. And it's not the picnic table that I had with Mamaw. To be honest, it's not the card table you get out when you go fishing to play cards with Uncle Gary. When God says he brings out a table, the word in the Hebrew means the king's table. It is his table. And I don't know if you've ever seen a king's table. If you've ever seen like a medieval movie or something, you see the king's table. It's huge. It's monstrous. There's like a huge pig with an apple in its mouth right on the front of it. There's all this food everywhere. It's the best of the best. And that's what God brings out for us in the middle of our distress. You know, when Alex and I started dating, you know, when you're dating, you always try to do like cute things. You guys ever notice this? So you can take pictures of yourself on Instagram and post it. That's really the whole reason behind it, is so people can see how great your life is, I think sometimes. But whenever we were dating, you know, that infatuation stage where you're just like, oh, we're in love and nothing can stop our love, right? You want to spend every second together. And not only that, but whenever you go on dates, what do? You do everything possible to make it the best date possible every time. You try to go out for the best food even though you can't afford it, right? And this is what you do when you're dating, right? You try to do everything possible to think outside the box because you want it to be creative and fun, because guess what? You're infatuated with each other. And I used to do that for Alex all the time. And a bunch of men are like, oh, that wasn't me. It was totally you. Dudes, like when we fall for a girl, we fall hard. Like we don't even see reality sometimes when we fall. But you know, think about this. I used to do all these things for Alex. But God goes so much farther than that, because he sets out the king's table not to be cutesy, because we're going on a date and we want to take a picture for Facebook and Instagram, but because he knows that I am in distress and I need him this very hour. And so he brings out the best of the best to show me how far he's willing to go to share the table with you and to enjoy your company. Isn't that a good God? Man, that is far greater than anything I could have ever done for Alex. It's far greater than anything we could ever do for our children. Because when we're in our distress, God meets us in a way that nobody else can meet us in. You know, many people refer to the table as kind of the game changer in this scripture, and it's a big deal. But the table itself is not the one that comforts us in the middle of our distress. It's the Lord who is sitting at the table. And so the table is the presence of God. It's representative of his presence being there in our distress. Let me ask you guys this, and I know Dave and I have talked about this. We talked about Qdoba. sometimes we come in on Sundays, right, and we're just in distress. But we come in, we sing. I mean, after that time of worship, man, how could you have not experienced the presence of God? And when you experience the presence of God, what happens? You're no longer in distress. Your heart is overflowing with thankfulness to God. And I love this because the more you sing, the more you're able to release the things that he needs to be in control of that we're trying to stay in control of. Isn't that true? And the thing about it is when we're in his presence, something special happens. And it says in the verse, what does it say? He anoints my head with oil. He chooses us for a purpose. And when he chooses us and fills us up with his presence there, we feel empowered by God. How many have ever left thinking, nothing can throw me off my game for living for Jesus the rest of this week? I mean, sometimes it's awesome to be that way, but the reality is 9 a.m. Sunday, Monday morning, that boss that we can't stand walks into our office, and literally hours later from being filled with God, we're in distress. Isn't that how it works? But let me say this, when we come into the presence of God, many times we leave and our situation hasn't changed, has it? Because many times God doesn't change your situation, he changes you. You may be going into that boss and you're like, oh man, I got to go see that boss today. But because you were in the presence of God, it's not, oh man, I have to go see that boss today. It's, I have to show my boss the love of Jesus Christ. So today I'm choosing to humble myself because I don't know what's going on in their life and they need Jesus. That is the only answer for them. So today, if they ride over my head, if they let me go, if they chew me out, if they cuss me out, I will humble myself before them, just as Jesus did on the cross. And that's the power of the table in the presence of God. Because many of us, our situation isn't going to change after we walk out of this room today. But we're going to change. Our perception of the situation is going to change. There are some people who annoy me in my life. Newsflash. All of us have this. But when I experience the presence of God, many times the person who annoys me the most, God speaks to my heart and changes my outlook on them and says, you need to be their friend to bring the best out of them, to show them that they're loved and that they have potential. Lead them, take them, show them where I want them to go. And all of a sudden, they're not an annoying person. They're a child of God who God is calling me to shepherd and lead and set an example for. They may not have the best social skills. To be honest, they may be the most socially incompetent people ever. But you know what? Start loving them and lead them out of that. And all of a sudden, you're doing ministry instead of complaining. And that's what the table of God does. It's because its presence is there. The funny thing about it is our enemy cannot stop us from sitting at the table and enjoying the company of the Lord. Isn't that a good thing to know today? When we go in tomorrow and our cup is full, the thing that is distressing us cannot stop us from sitting in the presence of God. We are the ones that stop ourselves from sitting at the presence of God, and most of the time it's because we're too prideful. But I want to encourage you to humble yourself and sit at the table. Enjoy his company because his presence is there. Whenever we sit, we're never stagnant at the table. He never lets us just sit and be still in our life. God always has a place for us to go. And so when we sit at the table, when we enter his presence, he's always leading us somewhere. Have you guys ever been mad about something? And I love this about God. I know you experienced this with your story. And you're mad, you're upset, you're frustrated. You don't want to go sit at the table and be in the presence of God. But you do. Because you know it's right. You're not happy about it, but you're going to do it, and you're making the right choice. And it's just that far. I mean, it's not out of good intention. It's not out of goodwill. And to be honest, that's okay. God can handle that. But you sit down just because you know it's the right thing to do, even though you don't want to. And 30 minutes later, after sitting down, enjoying the company of the Lord, his hospitality, in talking with God about the thing that frustrates you the most, what happens? You are no longer mad. You're no longer frustrated. Isn't that hilarious how God does that to us? You want to know why? It's because we're able to talk it out with him just like we would our best friend. But you know the thing that God can do that our best friend cannot do is he can fill our heart with gratitude, endless gratitude, and unspeakable joy. And so all of a sudden, we empty out our frustration, our complaining to God, and we walk out of there a changed person because we sat at the table with the Lord. We enjoyed his company. And all of a sudden, God has changed our lives. See, God is always taking you somewhere when you sit at the table. It may not be a physical place, but he's always taking you to a spiritual place, to new heights. You know, in Psalm 66:12 is another verse that influenced this song. It says, you let men ride over our heads. We went through the fire, the water, yet you brought us to a place of abundance. We have 4 places that we went to. First, men, they rode over our heads. We were broken by that. We were humbled by that. And then we went through the fire, and God met us there. We went through the water, and he didn't let us drown. And then he brought us where? To a place of abundance. And abundance is simply just blessing. You know, the fact is that God has promised to lead all of us to a place of blessing in our life. And as I was preparing this, God revealed something else to me. He's like, you know, champ, he said, the fact that I'm always leading you to a blessing is a blessing within itself. The fact that God is leading you and your family to a place of blessing, that is a blessing. Can you see that? Can you see that? You know, blessing goes beyond monetary money. And I just want to make this clear today. You know, in America, it seems like we value money a lot. Our culture tells us to. But there are a lot of blessings that the Lord gives us that money could never buy, and that mean 10 million times more than any amount of money we could ever have. You know, one of the lyrics in the bridge, it says, I will trust in you, Lord, in the promise I believe. What promise are we talking about here in the bridge? Well, it answers it in the next line. It says, you will lead me to a place to reward abundantly. The promise that God is leading us to a place of blessing is what we're holding on to. And this leads me to my last question for Dave and Emily today. What has God's blessings looked like in your life since you have come out of this?
So to get us to that place where we came out of that, I want to make a point that there was a lot of guilt that I had during that time, and I was retiring from the Navy, coming on staff here, and on that April 20th day, it was kind of obvious, evident to me I wasn't going to be able to, I had already made the decision to step down from my position here at the church, and I was grieving that loss too, understanding that, so I'd given up my career in the military and was going on to do the next thing that I had always thought I would do, and now that was gone, and so I was questioning God maybe a little bit. And then I was feeling guilty with Emily because I kept saying, you didn't sign up for this. Like, you shouldn't have to deal with a husband who can't take care of our kids and take care of you and work and things like that. And she said something to me that during that time. I don't want to take that from her, so I just want to let her share that piece.
Yeah, I mean, during that time when he said it often, he'd be like, you know, you didn't sign up for this, you don't deserve this. And, you know, I told him, I said, but I did sign up for this. You know, it's certainly, that trial came a lot sooner than I'd expected. I thought we'd be old and gray before I'd be taking care of him. But, you know, it was never a question if I was going to stick it out with him. And, you know, when we said our vows, we meant them. And,
that was really powerful for me. And even though I knew that, God started showing me that piece as well. So that April 20th, 2016 was that dark day. That day also turned out to be a pretty great day as well. Emily had to leave, go to work that night, and she left, and I was probably a little emotional about that, being left home as well. And she went to work, and she interceded on my behalf. She prayed hard, and then she did some research, and she found a surgeon online, which right away you think, I found a surgeon online. Sounds a little sketchy, like we're going to go to Tijuana and get surgery, you know. But this one happened to be at Johns Hopkins, so it's not like, you know, it was a pretty credible place. And he was kind of world renowned for this particular area. And as she sends me the link to this website and read the tutorials from some of the guys were saying the exact same thing. Some women had experienced the kind of pain, but a lot of men saying exactly what I was saying. And it was basically like, this doctor changed my life. He gave me a life back. There were several military people who had had the same type of injury. Some of the people had the same cause for the same as mine. And so we decided to pursue that. Now, a lot of things had to go right in order for this to work. First of all, it was in Baltimore, so we were going to have to fly to Baltimore. The Navy extended me on active duty for another 3 months. So they postponed my retirement so I could go and have the surgery while I was still on active duty. And then we found out right before the trip that my command was going to pay for my travel and everything because I was still an active duty service member. So we didn't have to worry about the cost of the trip aside from Emily's plane ticket. But the surgery was going to be out of pocket because they didn't accept TRICARE insurance because he was a specialist. He's the only person in the world can do it. And so by their standards was, I can charge whatever I want because I'm a specialist. But we got it approved, and so we had this, but it was going to be $20,000 out of pocket. And I told Emily, I'm like, how can we do that? And she never hesitated. She said, how can we not? Like, if there's even a chance that you can even be slightly restored. So we prayed. I went to the church office the next day, and they put me in a circle. They just surrounded me and prayed over me. And I really had hope again. And I was like, okay, God, you heard my cry last night, and I can keep going again. Like, I won't question you again. No matter what happens, even if you choose not to fix this, I'm going to continue to serve. And so the enemy didn't like that, so tried to come against us. So in the midst of us getting ready to go to Baltimore and have the surgery, Encounter Camp was going on, which is always awesome for those students. It's coming up here in a couple weeks. And last day
next
of camp,
Thursday.
Yeah, you're welcome. Gabe gets his finger broken very badly that last day and was going to require surgery. So, and guess what? The orthopedic surgeon says, no, this can't wait, and it has to be done right away. And of course, it's going to be the exact same day that my surgery is scheduled. So now my wife has to reconcile, and I have to reconcile. How can we fly halfway across the country to have a surgery when our son is going to be having surgery? So to his credit, he never batted an eye, and he's like, no, it's fine, just go. And, you know, my mom was great, and she took him to have his pre-op and surgery, and then Emily had to give permission over the phone for my mom to act as her proxy. So imagine for you moms out there what it's like to know that your son's about to go into surgery, and you can't be there. But then she's here with her husband. How do you reconcile that? How do you kind of make that choice? And so Gabe was really great, strong and brave in that time, and at the end thought it was kind of cool and took some neat pictures, you know, those Instagram-worthy pictures we were talking about earlier with the pen sticking out of his finger. I went in to have the surgery, and I was doubtful because we'd had another small bad report right before. But essentially, he did an MRI-guided nerve block and says, it could be one of these two nerves. So we're going to go do a nerve block on this one, and it should take care of the pain, and if so, then we'll remove it. He did the block, and it didn't work, and I was like, listen, I'm not going to let one more person do another surgery on me in this particular region of my body when you're giving me a 50-50 shot, like, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But Emily said, no, we need to do this. So we prayed in the hotel. We went in that next day, and I had surgery. It was in the afternoon, so Gabe had already come out of his, and so we felt a little more comfortable. And when I woke up, I remember he had to make 3 fairly large incisions across my abdomen and body, but the pain was gone when I woke up. So. Amen. When you wake up from surgery and you're in less pain than before the surgery starts, you know that's something. And I remember being groggy, and I just said, it's gone. And Emily said, what's gone? I said, the pain, it's gone. So there was a lot of rounds of physical therapy and things to try to rebuild muscles in my leg and my hip and things like that. And I'm always going to have some pain, but nothing like that. And so I was restored, and it's kind of like, I've got that little limp. And again, not to compare yourself to Jacob, but
It's swagger, bro.
Yeah,
it's swagger.
It's just swagger. But I can walk, and I can walk without a cane. And so somebody gave me as a retirement gift, a Master Chief that I worked with, a really beautiful cane that was made with all my rank insignias and my warfare devices. It was a very thoughtful gift. And now it hangs just as a representative that I don't have to use it. Amen. And so it was really, so going through all that, how do you might say, wow, Dave, you must be really spiritual. And so that's not the case. And we have some close friends, Josh and Becky can attest to that. They got to hear some of the whining that Dave had to do, during that time, and the questioning. But the other side of that is we never question, like, not being in church and being involved and trusting God is not an option. And so we mentioned that before, that we know that our kids were watching. So at the end of the day, we have a saying in our house between me and Emily, and not necessarily to the kids, but to us, is 5 out of 6 isn't good enough. We have 6, and we're going to make sure we do everything that we're supposed to and can do to ensure that they enter in the kingdom. Amen. And so their eternity was somewhat based off of what are we doing here, because they're going to be watching every step of the way. And I failed, and I whined, and I complained, and we didn't get to do some of the fun things that we wanted to do, but we never wavered in our faith, and we trusted. And so with that peace and that sharing of our kids, we were trying to set that example that it doesn't matter what storm comes along the way, we're going to trust God. So the next piece, God kind of shared another, vision or word with us, and I'm going to let Emily share that piece.
Yeah, so after Dave's surgery, we were actually set to move back to Washington. We had bought a house there, we were having one built.
Washington State.
Washington State, not Washington, Missouri. Okay. Just to clarify.
Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
For us Jefferson Countyans.
So Dave was already living in Washington, and I was at home trying to sell our house, and he came home on Thanksgiving to visit, and it was during that time that we were just kind of praying about, are we making the right decision? And I really felt like I got a word from the Lord that we could certainly move to Washington, and God allows us the freedom of choice, and we could move there, and I think ultimately God would have blessed us, but I don't think nearly as much as us staying here, because God told me that we could move and our kids would grow into lovely Bradford pears that grow quickly and they bloom, but they get knocked down as soon as those first gust of winds blow through. And then if we stayed here, that we would grow mighty oaks that were rooted in Christ and in their faith. So we stayed.
Amen. And as we kind of wrap this story up, just living in the blessing of God. Because look at what was happening. Even though you were in physical pain, it didn't look like it or feel like it. There were 6 little eyes that were watching their parents take this journey. And to see how the Lord has poured into their children because of their stand of faith has been unbelievable. And I always like to think that God is changing someone because of the circumstances I'm going through. And for Dave and Emily, that's definitely their children. I've been their children's student pastor. I'll probably be Ben and Sam's, and it's been a great pleasure to do that. But like Jordan is their oldest daughter, and she is a wonderful woman of God. And she's got a boyfriend, Zach, who loves Jesus and wants to follow Jesus. I mean, what more blessing do you want in life as a father and a mother? That's priceless. And to see how the Lord has changed every single one of their children because of their stand in faith. I mean, talk about a blessing to them, even though it didn't feel like a blessing. Gabe, everybody's favorite, my personal favorite. Where are you, Gabe? I love you, bro. Gabe has an incredible work ethic. He works at McDonald's, and he can get you 30% off if you drive through and you mention his name. Just don't do it at 3 a.m. because his manager will get mad. But Gabe has an incredible work ethic. And there's something you guys may not know about Gabe. At Unite, our student retreat this last winter, Gabe brought one of his coworkers from McDonald's, and he paid his own way out of pocket. And I don't know if you know, but you make bank at working at McDonald's. And I'm really proud of him. He's been offered actually a raise and a promotion possibly too, right, Gabe? Really proud of you, bro. Yeah, you can clap for that. That's good. That means he's a hard worker and he's consistent. But he brought a friend from McDonald's, paid for his own way. I don't know if you guys know this, but he paid for about 2 other people's way to Unite. Dayton came, and he got saved at Unite. And not only that, the story gets better. Gabe got to baptize Dayton at our last baptismal celebration. I mean, talk about the blessings of God on your children because they watched you go through that and the way that he developed them. You know, Abby is on our student leadership team, and anytime I know that a girl's coming to one of our student events who may feel out of place or uncomfortable, and Kelly will attest to this, I always ask Abby to be their friend because I have seen Abby take a girl who maybe feel uncomfortable, and all of a sudden by the time they leave, they have 15 new friends and they feel a part of the group. You know how special that is for a middle schooler to be able to do that? It's the blessings of God. It's the blessings of God. Annabelle is just a pure leader. She just leads. And I'm going to tell this story, and they're going to get mad at me, but I don't care. I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit long here. They came to the praise party a couple weeks ago, which was awesome, by the way. It was phenomenal. We're going to do another one September. That weekend we released the album. We're going to do another one. They wanted to sit on the front row because in student leadership team, we talk about leadership happens on the front row. Not because you want to be recognized, but because you need to lead others and teach them how to follow Jesus. And so they come to the front row, and Brandon came up. He's like, hey, you guys got to move. And so we should all turn and boo Brandon. Boo. Thank you. He's okay with it. He's good with it. But they were so upset about that. And you know what? I love that because they have such zeal to lead. And they want to lead students and to show them how to worship Jesus passionately. You know, they sit and they do a great job during the message. It's not just about singing, but what about teaching children how to sit and listen to the word of God being taught. I mean, it goes beyond just the singing part of it. And you know what? Every week you're going to see them up here on this front row. Talk about the blessings of God in their life. And you know, you have Sam and Ben, and they're just so full of joy up here singing. I think one of them was flossing, weren't they? Were they flossing up here? Just so full of joy. I mean, what more blessings do you want in life? But you know what? Their kids would not be where they're at spiritually if Dave and Emily would not have come and sat at the table and say, God, even though I have physical distress all around me, I'm going to enjoy your company and allow your company to change the other people who are looking at me right now.
If I could just say that if at the end of the day, the only thing that we get out of that is our children all get into the kingdom, then it was all still worth it. So,
amen. And this was for 4 years.
Yeah, and not if they're in the kingdom. They all
Yes.
believe in Jesus and they've all been
Amen.
baptized. So yeah, they Sam's our last one to baptize, but so they're all in the kingdom.
Amen. You know, and I think this goes right to your point, Dave. There is no greater blessing in this life that we can have than to know that God used our situation to change somebody else's life. Isn't that so true? If we know that what we struggled through and we went through has helped somebody else come to the kingdom, it is all worth it, even if it's just one person. Because that one person is going to be in eternity with us. You know, as Dave and Emily, you guys can have a seat. Thank you guys so much. And as the band comes out, we're getting ready to close. If you guys would stand with me. I just want to close with this. Man, some of you guys are wrestling with some things that are distressing you right now. These things are just haunting you on a daily basis. I want to encourage you to sit at the table. Be in the presence of God. Because you are going to enjoy his company. It's impossible not to enjoy the company of God when you sit at his table because he's so good. He's so good, and he knows just what we need, and he becomes what we need as we sit at the table. Some of you need to sit at the table and start having a discussion with God of something that you're holding on to very tightly, something you're trying to control, and you need to release it to God. You know, the thing about it is when we release things to God, he restores them. You cannot restore it under your own power. Release it to God. Allow him to restore that thing you're holding on to so tight. Listen, you're not in control. The more you try to control it, the worse it's going to get. It's time to sit at the table and enjoy the company of the Lord and trust in his goodness and his mercy.